As always today, I'm going to ask one more time, Sarah. Sorry, can I just check you see the slides again?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to signpost you the available resources. You're going to get a copy of these slides afterwards, share our experiences and advocate some approaches that we have found useful in the variety of settings that Sarah and I have worked with. I am Julie, I'm from the Colourworks. Many of us have met before. I've worked across public sector and private sector teams, and also a mishmash of higher education and health too. Sarah, do you just want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, ditto, not to take up too much time for the session, but similar to yourself, Julie, so private sector, public sector, and more recently my own business also, but very much part of the Colourworks as an associate and been working with Insights for over 15 years now.
So this might be familiar to you. When you go to Connections, so this is the Insights website where all the materials are. And if you do not have access for any reason, please just let us know and we'll make sure that that's all set up for you. This is what you pay your annual license fee for. So really important that we use it. When it comes to leadership development, you've got two different options. You have got their initial offering, which is Discovering Leadership Effectiveness. If, like me, you went on accreditation and got one of these, I'm really hoping it's still, yeah, lots of nods. Oh my God, this is gold dust. This is the entirety of the course at hand without needing to get online. This is actually the delegates workbook, which you can buy for people at £25 plus VAT. However, in my experience, I tend not to, but I pinch loads of material and loads of activity from it. So remember, you've got that. You also have their more recent offering, the Self-Aware Leader, whereas Discovering Leadership Effectiveness uses the profile, the usual Discovery Insights profile. The Self-Aware Leader uses the leadership profile, okay? To get the leadership profile, you don't have to redo the question set. You just press a button, or we can do that for you, and it creates the profile. I'll give you a glimpse of what it looks like. If any of you want to sample and give it a go, let us know, because we can get a free sample for you. And then with both of those, I personally think Insights Connections is a lot better than it has been in the past. There's a lot of resources there for each of these courses. So you've got all of the slides, all of the handouts. You have got a video telling you how to deliver this and how to do the exercise. You've got quite comprehensive facilitator notes as well. Sometimes there's delegate notes. And on quite a regular basis, they'll run a 90-minute webinar that says this is how you use the resources. For the self-aware leader, they've also got a whole day session that they'll take you through. That tends to be virtual. So those are your two offerings. A reminder then of what is in that first one. It's bog standard stuff. This is nothing that will be a surprise to you at all. And Sarah, from my perspective, I think it's just helpful, kind of standard content as well. It's a good start.
Yeah,
So
very much so.
the agenda in it is, you get people to reflect on where they're at, look at how those four colours show up specifically in a leadership context.
Mm.
I've put some of the slides in here. We're not going to spend time on them, but when I send you the deck, you've got them all together. To have a think about when you've used each of these, what do you want to do more of, what do you less of? It asks you, who do you admire? Who has a style that's different to you? How could you be a little more like that? And then, of course, oh, crikey, Kathy, we were just talking about this before we got going, weren't we? The shadow that we cast as leaders. I'll always make the point. You've got two elements here, me as a person and the post that I'm in. And in that leadership role, we know that that then can have a significant impact, whether intentional or unintentional. It shows you what the different colours look like from a leadership perspective, and it takes you through the model that they have that brings in sensing and intuition as well. So I'll say a little bit about that. It then asks you to think about how you motivate your team, to go back into the introductory part of the profile, the overview. There's a little paragraph that says about your decision-making style. I mean, that's a little gold nugget, isn't it? Just to get a leadership team to reread that and think about what's going to help you and what's going to hinder you from this. And then communication across the colours. So, Sarah, I don't think that's rocket science. It's just, it's good, isn't it? It's application. You might have done an introductory session with the leadership team, and then this is where you go next. I think you could probably land straight to this with like a bit of, I mean, you'd need a day.
Yeah.
But so these are the type of slides. I quite like this. One of the middle colours, you know, from that red perspective, high red sets an ambitious vision, high yellow sets an innovative, creative vision, high green, collaborative and vision setting, high blue, planned, prepared, data-driven, evidence-based visions. Okay. You've got the good day. You then specifically have some words around from a leadership perspective, the shadow you can cast on a bad day. I think that's helpful. And remember, all of this is editable if you feel that, you know, it's not quite the language for the culture. Give me a quick show of hands. Who is familiar with the 4 manifestations with the centered visionary leadership? Yeah, some, a little bit. I think it's quite helpful. So what they say is we have our preferences, that's the core colours in the middle. However, this is a an insights model. Insights say there are 4 manifestations. I change it to elements, but 4 manifestations of, as a leader, regardless of our colour preference, this is what we need to be bringing to the fore in a leadership role. And what it does is it goes a little bit deeper. It takes the intuition sensing. So it says the centered leader is introverted sensing. So therefore, this is where I've worked with these people. Oh, Sarah, it's calming, isn't it?
Yeah.
They do kind of inspire trust in that way of they know who they are. They're very centered. They're not the people running around, you know, in panic. It's a lovely energy to work with. We need to bring that to the fore.
And not first to speak either, and not always to speak.
Yeah, love that. But then, of course, the flip side of that is we need to set a vision. And so that extroverted intuition of, I need the bigger picture. My comfort might be the operational, but I need to be able to talk about the strategic, the bigger picture. I need to inspire. I need to take people with me. And those two might be in tension for some people. I mean, that's just an interesting conversation to have. And then from that really high feeling relationship approach, of course, we've got to engage. Of course, we've got to bring people with us. But oh my word, we've got to deliver. There are going to be challenging targets. So I quite like that. Let's go back, because sometimes teams don't always get the intuition, what am I saying, sensing, Sarah. We're going to come to that, aren't we, a little bit later. But it's nice that it brings it together. And then the deck and the facilitator's guide asks you to consider where are you spending your time as a leader, where need you to be spending some time, necessarily where you want to be, but where do you need to be? What's your team looking for as a cohort? This is an interesting conversation as to whether or not we're meeting all elements. So that's the model. Before I move to the self-aware leader, Sarah, does that make sense? Have I missed anything? So that's your book. All of it is in there. Self-aware leader is a little bit different. But the first half of it, it's a day session, although you can bite size it because there's a lot. There's way more than you'll ever fit into a day. Self-aware leader starts off some really nice generic exercises. There's a general discussion around people that you admire in this role. What do they bring? What's leadership? It's quite a big conversation we often have, isn't it? But what I like is the leadership journey part, and they give you some really nice prompts to help people think about this around the path they've taken, because people's career paths and stories are fascinating. What you've learned along the way, what you wouldn't repeat, what, you know, people who have really inspired you along the way, or advice that you've been given, blocks that you've come through. It's a really nice pre-exercise to ask people to have a think about and then come and share. And then that's learning and vulnerability and connection in the room. So that is a really nice one, but it's generic. They are quite particular. Insights say, I want our leaders to be really clear what outcomes they want. This isn't about me telling them. I want to understand. And maybe that's some of the brief that you take in advance as well, but just to get people really clear what they want from the day. It then goes to that model with the 4 manifestations and looks at similar kind of where you're spending your time, what's needed, and what's would you do less of. And then you come to the profile. Now, those first bullet points in the facilitator's guide is almost half a day. You then review like you would a discovery profile. You look at your leadership profile, and then they break it down into the 8 types. And the profile itself is broken into the 8. So it goes detailed. There are exercises for every one of those 8 types, and then you set goals. So that's the day. That's the agenda for the day. I don't know if you've ever done any training with the sales chapter. That's got 6 things in it. Trying to do 6 things in a day is nigh on impossible and actually gets repetitive. Trying to do 8 things in an afternoon is impossible. So what you do have there is a lot of material that actually you could do follow-up sessions, take 2 in turn, do like 2 or 3 hour sessions, or you prioritize as a team or as a cohort where you most need support. So that's the model. This is the 8 type. So you're going to have material in these decks for every single one, and it's going to look like this for every single one. And I'm just going to show you one. Agile thinking. So this is what it looks like. This is, there's definitions and what we would expect to see. What I like about this is that whilst that sits, okay, so we've coloured it from a blue preference perspective, they say, actually, we all do this really, really well. And we all bring really, really different things to agile thinking. So these are the strengths around the different lead preferences. And then these are some of the challenges, perhaps some of the blind spots that we need to be mindful of based on our lead preferences as well. And then it gives you an exercise. So for agile thinking, insights are saying we need to see things from different perspectives. So here's a really simple tool. Let's go back to this model. If you are working from a centered leadership perspective, you're looking at evidence-based. So it's going to look a little bit like this. So when you're making a decision, these are some of the questions you're going to need to ask yourself. It's going to look a little bit different if you're looking at it from a divisionary perspective, if you need to stand in this perspective. This is going to be the task-based. You know, what do we need to consider? This is the relationship kind of base. What do we need to consider? So the exercise for agile thinking is bring to mind a decision you've made or that you're making that you need to make as a team and apply this to it. And what insight does it give you? Okay. Now you can see that doing that 8 times is too much, but just bear in mind for every single one of those around the wheel, you've got an insights-based activity and those strengths and challenges around the colours for every one of these. Okay. So there's your options. Sarah, did that make sense?
Completely, yeah.
It means that you've got a lot of resources out there. As always, it's pick and choosing what is helpful to you. And I guess before Sarah and I go any further and start talking about some of the application, we're just really interested to get a perspective from you guys. Okay. So our questions to you are, what are the challenges you're currently facing in regard to leadership team development? And what are you doing at the moment? Sarah, I'm going to set up the breakout rooms. Do you just want to talk just a little bit about what they might look at like? So
Yeah.
challenges and where you're at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So for each of these areas, it's just about you having conversations between you, around what is it you currently face when it comes to those leadership sessions. What are the challenges that you're currently facing? Is it with regards to the difference in the teams? Is there something here around the types of sessions that you're thinking of running? You're not quite sure. What are the things that would be really valuable for us to talk about with you now? We can bring our experience into this session and make it really bespoke for you this afternoon. So that's particularly around the challenges piece, and then a bit around what you're already doing, because of course, as part of this session, if you're able to share across this session what you're currently doing and how that's working for you, it means that others are benefiting from that, and it's not just Julie and I that are giving out some examples, because you'll all have a raft of examples of what's worked well in the past. So challenges, and then what's working well, and then bringing that back into the session as some key things so that we can then pick on those from our experiences too. Is that all right?
Thank you. We've got 4 people in the rooms. We are going to run for 12, 13 minutes, and we'll let you know when we are going to close those. Any questions before we get going? Guys, you should have an invite to step into your rooms. Oh, guys, it's good to
cut me
see.
off, Julie, in my prime.
Oh, no.
I was just asked a question by my 2 colleagues, and I was just about to say, and here's my answer, and then you cut me back.
And were you having a moment of genius as well, Helen?
Oh dear, that was quite funny. I said, "Oh, Julie must have heard me. Oh, well, let's cut Helen off."
Never.
Colleagues that I was with, I'll give you my email address. And I'll
cool.
send you
Nice.
Oh, well done, Helen. Thank you. Sarah, how are we doing this? Should we just ask for feedback from each group?
That would be great. Key themes. Yeah.
Key themes. So, Helen, you were in a group with David and Giles. Give us a sense. Challenges, where we went.
Yeah, I'll happily I've made a few notes, but if I've missed anything, my fellow colleagues, and please jump in. So we talked about some of the challenges. One of the challenges being that hybrid working, where our people in our organisations are working from home, working from an office. I've added challenges because I'm an operational 24-hour service, and actually getting people abstracted from frontline duties is really, really difficult. I think there are also challenges about our own delivery, and I shared a sort of a personal story about what I find challenging when I know what my style is and my audience might be very different to me, and having to then not only deliver content that I'm expected to, look after my own style preference and check in on myself. You're just doing Helen's way, and you're not meeting the impact you should be. But also, we talked about some people think with a little bit of knowledge of insights they know everything, and I spend quite a bit of time diplomatically, politely correcting people that think they know it all. So that takes up time. All of these things when you're there. And I've got a day to run tomorrow, and I haven't even packed my case yet. But I'm thinking, I know who's in the room. I know what I need to get covered. But it's then allowing yourself to be flexible enough and adapt to go with the flow, ensuring that you're not doing an injustice to the team that you're with, or yourself, etc., or to insights, because it's your accredited material. So it's sort of like all of those things become additional challenges. Have I missed anything, fellow colleagues in my group?
No, you did an amazing job. I think we talked about scaling it.
We did.
How do you get it going? How do you get everyone to a similar level when you've got different levels of experience in the rooms, and how do you get that? And then one of the challenges I'm having specifically at the moment is sometimes you've got a bunch of people in your organisation, and they're not, I wouldn't call fertile ground for some of this work, even though the organisation's expecting it to happen. And that might be they're not ready now. It might be that they think they're ready, but they're not. So we've got a few conflicting things with senior managers saying these teams need this because they've got these problems. When you're in a room with them, they're like, we haven't got any problems, we're awesome. Yeah, we know this stuff, we're amazing. And you're like, okay, there's an expectation reality gap that isn't really the facilitator's responsibility to address in the room. So yeah, that was just a couple of things that I thought I'd add, but I don't know if David had anything else.
I think
They're really
no, I think that about covered everything. Yeah.
Oh my word, Giles, I feel your pain.
And me the same with Helen, like that whole piece around, dispelling myths and legends before you've even got anywhere. I use that phrase a lot. Part of my role as your facilitator is also to dispel the myths and legends around what you may have understood about insights and some of the language you might be using, from a point of view of that leadership and role modeling. Not calling everybody Smurfs because they're not all blue, just that whole piece. It's it's another add-on, isn't it? It's a bit that you've got to add in to what is already a really packed session. Yeah.
We had a group, I know Lorna's had to dash off, but Karen, Laura and Sinead, give us a sense. What were some of the challenges and themes you identified?
From my point of view, so I mean, Julie, that Insights is very well embedded in our business. We order a lot of profiles, we do lots of stuff with our management teams. It's the more senior, like the ops level team now that feel that they haven't had any sort of development. So they're asking me and Katie to run something for them, which is why we're here, or why I'm here, to try and just they've all done the sort of Insights discovery session, and Katie and I run a lot of the sort of team sessions with our pub management teams. So we're just looking at what we can do for our ops manager sort of level as a group of ops managers, and yeah, we're not really sure, to be honest. But I'd come here and get inspired.
I have got a question just out of curiosity. So they've done an introductory workshop. How did they respond? Was it generally?
Oh, they love the introductory workshop, yeah. And some of the ops managers will have done it with the rest of their patch, so like their managers and their head chefs and stuff. But they're looking for something as an ops team.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's very different, isn't it? Working with that group of peers, I think, rather than working with those direct reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we also discussed, I think, Laura, you and I have both delivered some elements of the self-aware leader piece, and getting the support from Julie, lovely Julie, just to think about what elements are included in that and how to make it a bit bespoke for your organisation so it fits. So think about what time you have, the type of audience. So for my organisation, the Gym Group, they are remote operational managers. Time is of the essence.
Yeah.
So with the time they have to be taken offline, make it the most effective, but still getting that message across of building on the introductions and now getting to really think about their leadership hat on. So that went really well. We delivered that last year, but I've even picked some tips of some of the stuff that Laura did, thinking, we could have done things slightly differently as well. So, there's always things you can learn from sessions like this. And the challenge is always time. And I know Sinead will record of time, the different levels of leadership, be it from C-suite to your first line manager. So how to pitch it just right. And I think sometimes the more senior as well is time is even more the essence. So it's got to be really valuable when they are going to take that time to dedicate to something like this. That's the main conversation. That Laura, Sinead, have I missed anything?
No.
Thanks.
You got it.
Okay. Final group. We had Kathy, Mel, and Sam. Oh, Sam's had to drop out, but it's gone away back. Go on, Kathy, Mel. What did you think about?
Well, I think Mel and Sam have got some similar challenges because you're both dealing with organisations where there's been a lot of expansion. So where Insights was quite well established, now is perhaps more a minority than the majority. And how as you said, I think somebody said about, being able to scale it up and get that reach and get that buy-in from everybody was definitely one aspect that you both had in common, I think. Mel, perhaps you should carry on.
No, that's fine. But yeah, you're right. That's one of the biggest challenges. And I think somebody else touched on it as well. It's what you do with that more senior leadership group, because we're using it really well in our in-house management development program in chunks and weaving it in so that Insights starts the beginning of the program and then comes in as we motivate people, as we develop people, as we sort of communicate with people. But what do you do with that next group where they need something more than just because they're already great managers and leaders. So showing them about shadows and things like they're not just going to be interested in that. So they've got their profiles, but how do you use those profiles at that higher level to develop them as better leaders when the effective leadership training, if you like, is quite low level?
Yeah.
That's fair to say.
Anything else from that group?
Time and money, just as other people have said, trying to get the budgets and the time away from the day-to-day job to actually spend with them as well on this sort of thing.
Sarah, can we just start with that the conversation around time?
Yeah.
Because it is incredibly hard. I've been working with someone recently, she thought she had the leadership team in the room next week. No. September, if she's lucky. And it is just that pushback and other things are being prioritized. And there's a bit about how people are valuing it. But then there's also the reality of there are some things that have to come first.
Yeah, very much so. And I've been listening to all of you there with your challenges from the point of view of we can't get everyone in the room together. We haven't got enough time together. We've got people who we can't abstract from the business. I don't think our people are engaged. We need to spend a short amount of time. We need to spend a long amount of time. We need to go to the detail. We need to keep it high level. And these are real challenges, aren't they, as facilitators, to then do something where people walk away and go, that was brilliant. That was amazing. That was the best thing I've ever had from a point of view of a leadership perspective. I've really learned something there, and that's added value. And it's back to what we'd said previously around different people needing different things. The place that I go to with this, and sort of a lot of this is how I operate, is it can knock your confidence in that place of going, well, what do I do? And where do I start? And where do I go deeper? And where do I keep this more superficial? And what do I even use by way of, a tool or a way of working, a methodology? And my kind of go-to, I suppose it'll be like my life vest, I suppose, is to be always really clear on what's the problem I'm trying to fix. In that instance, what is the outcome we need to achieve? Because if it's okay for that to be in September, then so be it. But what could we do in the meanwhile for those that are available to warm them up to that? So that piece around engagement as well. When I'm considering, there are those in the room that are walking in and going, we're in a great place, or I'm not sure why I'm here. And again, that's an oldie but a goodie, isn't it? My manager sent me. Are they really sure? Have they got clarity around what it is that they might get from this? And is it compelling? Does it work towards an outcome that supports them in business? So, Laura, you spoke there around what do we do next? What's the next step? And how do we engage our leaders in that? Or how do we know what they need? And again, it's about that. What's the outcome we need to achieve with people in this moment? What would be next for them by way of how does this support us with our business goals or objectives? So, that's the piece that I use as my lifeline, so that I'm then able to say, well, okay, is it smaller interventions with individuals to lead up to a bigger event? Is it some individual coaching? Is it a piece of reflective work so that we can come together? Are we able to break this down into individual sessions? Or is it important? And I am quite firm on that piece around how do we make sure that we have everybody in the room so that we're getting that group movement of change and culture. So, they're the things that we have to be flexible and agile as facilitators. Sometimes we can't get everyone in the room. We can't always get the session that we need when we want it. So how do we get the best out of it whilst managing expectations about what we can realistically achieve, so that people don't walk away saying, well, I'm not quite sure what that was about, or I don't know why I was doing that, or, so that would be one of my suggestions, is around how can you use the tools that you've got in such a way that they give people that sense of that was useful, that was valuable. And it might be a phased approach. It might be part of something bigger. So you start building those small fires in order to get engagement and momentum. So that's kind of a holistic view, right?
You're making me think of a team I'm working with at the moment where the one day off site has been bargained down to half a day,
Oh yeah.
not off site. So I know what that's going to look like. And I don't know if it's fatalistic of me. I get to that point of thinking, okay, I will take what you have available. And you are going to realize quite quickly in that session that we are skimming the surface and that you need to make more time for this. But you're not going to know that until we start some of these conversations.
Absolutely.
And so, okay, let's, I'll work with that if that's what we have. And then, I'm hopeful that then they will start to prioritize. And it's a little bit, Helen, you're saying about the audience is different to me. Helen and I are absolute opposites. We're complementary, work really well together. I sometimes go into a session with my high green thinking there is a level that we need to dig to because of the issues in this team. And you know what? Sometimes I've learned it's not the time and it's not the place, and we ain't going to do it in 2 hours. So let's have the conversation we can have. And let's just be as pragmatic as we possibly can, because I don't want to put people in a place of such discomfort that actually we're finishing a conversation that, they then walk out from, and it's going to be even worse. And if I therefore have to rail back my green and the depth of the conversation, the trust that we need to get to, okay, well, let's do what is possible. You've got to be so pragmatic, Sarah, I think sometimes.
You really do. And I've learned, certainly in the last year or so, that a phased approach is okay. If we think about the context in which all of the people you've spoken about work, they don't have always time for a whole day off site. They don't have time even for a half day. They've got an hour of what I now call a masterclass, as opposed to bite size. I'm giving them the essence of something so we can then say, well, what happens next? So what were you curious about? What have you used? And then pulling that back in clinic type approaches. And I know Helen's really good at this piece around action learning sets or self-guided groups, that they're then able to embed what they've started to unpick. So I think we quite often put a lot of responsibility on ourselves to deliver the output, the outcome, the end point in what started out as 8 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, 60 minutes. If you can do it in half an hour, we'd be really grateful. And I think that's a lot of pressure on us. So the explicitness around what we can do and how that opens the door to something further down the line. We're not being greedy. We just want them to get the momentum. We want them to embed it. We want them to have that behavioral change or get that sense of, God, I now understand self better. That can be one of the ways to do it. And again, coming from my colour perspectives in the let's get moving, let's move on, that was a real learning, from a point of view of, okay, let's take it one step at a time, eat the elephant one bite at a time.
And I know that we've talked as well about the depth of, you've done the ops level team, you've done the basic leadership development, and then going deeper. I just want to make the point, and Sarah, give me your view on this. When I go and work for the first time, even with an exec team, I am conscious of my language, of the context, but I am using the same material often because there is so much in that introductory session that is relevant regardless. Yeah. So I don't do special, it's the same as I would do for a front level team. Give us your view, Sarah.
Very much so. It's special because it's that group, and it may be that group have never spoken to each other in this way before. So of course, you're bespoking to the point of view of the outcome that we need to achieve, but the conversations still remain the same because we're using the same methodology, the same color, conversational descriptors. So yeah, it's very much a taking people through that process and giving them the space, creating the safety, of course, making sure that high trust is there, but being able to have the conversations that you need to could be very similar. And interestingly, they can be very different depending on the organization you're working with. And that can take you by surprise as a facilitator. Again, if you're working across different functions or different teams, for me, different organizations. But yeah, similar set of inquiring, that kind of appreciative inquiry type approach, consultancy approach, curiosity around asking people questions that seem very light, but can go really deep.
And that said, I know that you and I often have this conversation about working at this level, specifically with sensing intuition.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
I use the standard slides. However, the conversation for me is a little bit different. What do you do, Sarah, around this with sensing intuition with kind of like a senior group?
So with sensing and intuition, it's definitely for me about how they are communicating with their people with regards to what is it that we need to achieve. So is it a goal? Is it a particular outcome? Is there something here that you need to land to an audience? And where are you and where are your preferences? Of course, we have a mixture of the both, but we may find that we sit either towards the left or the right with regards to sensing and intuition. And that in turn can have a huge impact on how we then present an idea, a concept, a project, a goal. And so if being more on the intuitive side or intuition side, I beg your pardon, then it's going to be a lot more big picture. It's going to be a little bit more about the art of the possible and just the impact that that can have on others sitting in the audience, that they may be quite frustrated by the fact that that's all very nice, but what about what we need to do? What's our role? What's our responsibility? Conversely, if somebody's more sensing as a leader, are they starting off with a very exciting, from their perspective, 26-point plan? And people get quite frustrated in that space with regards to the fact they say, but what might we get involved in? How might we be inspired? How might we feel engaged? What might we be able to do based on the innovation and creativity parts of us that we can add to that goal or vision? And so how important it is for leaders to really walk that continuum as part of the way they communicate with people is something that really lands well, because I think we can come from our place of preference, particularly under stress, under sense of urgency, and to move along that continuum, and even just recognizing if it is, we're talking about the vision right now, the plan will come next week. The part of the audience that then isn't engaged can just sit on their hands a minute and engage and enjoy that kind of vision setting element of the conversation, knowing that other piece is coming. There's also a piece for them as leaders when they are working with their colleagues, that they can recognize, okay, what questions do I need to ask to unlock where I come from either a sensing or intuition or somewhere in the middle preference, because I might be getting frustrated and not listening to my leadership team at the point in which people are indulging in their particular part of that preference. So, something about them having accountability for where they sit, how they then present as a result of that, but also how they engage from their perspective when they're receiving information. So that's how I do it.
It does amaze me the amount of SLTs I work with, strategic leadership teams who spend very little of their time in a strategic space as well. Mm-hmm. And you then do the sensing intuition and realize that, of course, regardless of the sector we're working in, these are people who are really good accountants, architects, data analysts who are now in a leadership perspective, who really like to tinker in the operational because they get it and it's familiar to them, and they're not doing that overview because it is hard. It's hard and it's uncertain, and there's not that clarity all the time. So I find sometimes unearthing, if you've got that senior team with that strong preference for sensing, there's that little light bulb moment sometimes of recognizing that we're doing what is comfortable for us, but actually it goes for me as well. When you're working at that level, you've got to consider the next tier down of leadership as well. And the interaction between those two is absolutely key. And it gets really blurred. And I have senior people saying to me, the next tier down aren't doing the jobs. And the next tier down is saying, we're not even allowed to do our jobs, Julie. And I think it's really interesting just getting the teams to talk about what those different tiers represent.
Definitely. That piece about not really understanding exactly, or not having a group consensus around what is our goal or what is our vision. It's, again, this is something that I'm quite often brought in to talk about. It is crunchy conversation. And that team having the trust and also respecting each other's preferences and being able to say, oh, you know, I am quite in that space of sensing. So I need a hand here, you know, again, being able to be vulnerable in that space to have that healthy conflict. Again, that's something that is very live. And for some people, they feel as though they should know it, but they're not sure what other people think in that team. So again, being able to unlock the conversation so that they're having the same conversation, or they're having the conversation where they are disputing each other's views and are coming to a common agreement. You know, that is part of pushing them into that intuition space in a way, so that they again can go back to sensing and go, okay, so what happens now? Because that means we're now being collegiate with our communications with that next level down. Without that, we might be being a bit at odds and maybe even not allowing them, empowering them to deliver.
This does make me think as well. So give us a perspective on this one, colleagues. I happen to, one of my beliefs around working at this level is actually we're working with people where it is far more difficult for a leadership team to be vulnerable. And to say, I don't know, I don't get it, I'm struggling with it. I think it's far more difficult as when you're working in hierarchy at a higher level. Kathy, I don't know if you see that. You're working with a lot of heads, aren't you? A lot of head teachers and senior people.
Yes. And I think, I mean, luckily, I'm not usually doing so unless they're bought into the idea of using the profiles and using insights. So generally speaking, I've been lucky and they're on board. I'd say there's one team recently I've worked with where it really was a bit of a disaster. But I've been using the Lencioni stuff quite a bit to explore trust and vulnerability, because those have been the sort of issues that I've been dealing with. And I've found, I mean, it's challenging, it's really challenging, but I've found it very powerful, and they've really got talking, and inevitably it's then led to, right, and now we need to really address accountability and constructive conflict or challenge, because that's where they always score themselves the worst. But at least they're being open about that and they're starting to acknowledge it. And so, you know, from that point, where the head is not prepared to be vulnerable, it's almost like, well, then I don't know what I can do. And maybe that's me being defeatist. But if the top dog is not going to model it, it's not prepared to, it's not going to play along, then, or at least attempt to with some willingness, however tough, I don't know how I would get past that, to be honest. I don't know. Am I being too defeatist? So I feel for some of you where you've got it quite embedded at lower levels, and it's your top tier who are sort of, we haven't got time for this, because it's kind of, well, if they're not behind it, then it's very tough for you to really meaningfully impact an organization, I would have thought.
Can I ask, is there anyone else using Lencioni? Helen, yeah. Giles, what's the face for? Tell me. I'm really intrigued.
That was probably me just trying to rearrange my back that I pulled when I was trying to dry my toes out. We've used it a little, but only at exec and SLT level with a third party. But I can see the value in having that type of conversation at different spots. You know, I think my reflection's always going to be, and I think a few people have mentioned this in different ways, is you use the tool that's most relevant to the thing. And I think my reflection tends to be sometimes insights isn't the thing. So don't try and bend it into the insights bucket if it's just not the right tool. You know, don't hammer a nail in with a screwdriver. It's amazing at lots of things, so use it for those. But I think when you have lots of different tools, you really start to see they all converge in slightly different places. So you can embed the Colourworks stuff through a chat about difficult conversations and a tool you're launching about that, because you're going, well, actually, there's preference here as well. See, the richer the environment you can build around your toolkit, and the more links you get, the better it is. So yeah, it's amazing how many times you're presenting and you're like, oh yeah, I've never really noticed the link there before, but yeah, and then you share it and everyone's like, oh, I get it now. And yeah, so it's
I mean,
Lencioni and all those things, yeah, the different things really good at certain things, and you can blend it a bit. So yeah, just
I mean, in when I have used it, Giles, in those sessions, it hasn't been a specific insight session. It's just a program I've managed to build because they got me in for insights first, and then I've managed to persuade them to do more. But there are those little links. So, for example, recently when I was doing one about sort of, conflict and accountability, I'd asked them before the session to go through their profile and just find any statements that might suggest their own personal response to conflict and accountability. Some of them find it quite hard to recognize them, actually, which is interesting. But there are hints in there, and then using that as a bit of a starting point, but then essentially moving on to just talking about that as a topic, but just kind of but let's think a little bit about why you personally might be very conflict averse, or absolutely up for the challenge, or etc., what our reactions might be.
Yeah, it's very cool. We were doing one on transactional analysis,
yeah,
and using parent, adult, child states and going critical parent. Do you see a theme?
Yeah.
So that you might find a link there, you might not, but ask yourself the question, explore it, and play with it, and it's good stuff.
I think you're
It's
right. That one tool fits everything, devalues it almost, doesn't it? What I really want is the language within the organization to be inclusive. So I don't want some people talking about it and other people are thinking I don't get it. I've got to admit, Helen, I'd really value your views on this. I do use Lencioni though quite a lot with insights at a senior level. Go on, give us your perspective on this one, Helen.
Sorry, my mouse wasn't working then, and I was fiddling it, and I couldn't find the mute button. I'm similar to what Giles just said. I think I bring in different elements from my own toolkit, if you like, depending on the team I'm working with and where they want to go. So my sort of mantra, if you like, is we'll start with something that opens up a conversation, that gives a safe space for people to open and talk, and depending on where we go, I'll adapt and flex and bring in different things. So I would go armed with a whole host of different things, but I wouldn't necessarily keep to script, if you like, because it depends where the conversation goes. So I've used Lencioni at various levels in the organization. Used it at first line supervisor level, and developed something which is almost like a pulse check on the team climate. So I've used Lencioni in that way. I've also used it with very senior teams, and I've found, probably in my experience over many, many years in my career, not just in my current organization, that the challenges, often they say it's conflict, but in actual fact, it's normally trust, but they just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that, and that creates a really interesting dynamic in the room when they say, oh yeah, we trust each other totally, and you can just see from body language, from the way they're talking, from the way they talk about their own portfolio areas where there's supposed to be one senior team with one voice, that they're just talking about their bit of the business and don't come and step in my space. And you just think that the trust is just not there. So I think you often think you get told it's X, and you go in and you uncover it's A, B, and C actually. And it's just allowing them to come on a journey of self-discovery, and for them to find out for themselves, actually, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Let's have a think about that. I sometimes use the phrase, and I know that you shared some what you say, Julia. I sometimes use the phrase, may I make an observation about what I've just seen, heard, and allow them to give me permission to go, I've just witnessed in the last 15 minutes this happening. And I would often then link it back to maybe a team wheel where they're obviously all plotted and their different preferences, and go, how does that, this is absolutely this team will playing out, but what does that say about the strengths of this team and the vulnerabilities of this team? So it is, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, Julie, is about flexing to the needs of the group, but noticing things and not letting them get away with them not being noticed, if you see what I mean. Very diplomatically drawing their attention to things that you can see that they might not be able to see for themselves.
I have struggled as a facilitator to do that. I know that's exactly how I bring value to the room, but as an introvert, I'm trying to work out the best way of saying it. And I've learnt, what's that phrase, that say what you see, from that flipping quiz show. And it's often in sessions, I'm just thinking, say what you see, Julie, say what you see. Because it is that, I'm going to use that, Helen.
It sometimes gets me in hot water, I'll be honest.
But it's probably how you value.
Moment, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable for you and for them, but at the end of the day, you're there to help. You're there to just offer your guidance, your expertise, that's why they asked you to be there. So and they can dismiss it if they wish afterwards.
And that's a really nice way of linking into the importance of understanding what it is that we're looking to achieve from, whether it be that session or from this intervention or as a result of coming together, because you can then unapologetically say what you see or make an observation or point out, that was really interesting comment that you made there, because based on where you are looking to be, based on where you are headed, based on where your aspirations take you, and it just allows us to link into that and not feel nervous or apologetic about pointing something out. I really like Giles's point as well around not, there isn't one tool that does everything. And again, linking it back to the outcomes piece, you're then able to decide, well, which tool is it that I need, or which part of insights, because there are so many facets, aren't they, from a leadership perspective, that you can start at that foundation level and just do that with leaders to start with, then getting into self-aware leaders, then doing the piece about individual coaching, or even warming them up with coaching first, starting with Lencioni, getting into more of a leadership space. And again, that sounds like a lot of time. I appreciate that. It's a lot of time for leaders to take out. But if they genuinely are not working effectively together, there is a series of interventions that may be required in order for them to get to the space of being able to work together effectively, and then effectively lead, for them to really understand, how do we show up as a collective? What are people seeing? What are they hearing? What are they experiencing from us as a leadership cohort, or as me as an individual leader?
I really like asking teams that question. And sometimes I will just ask, is this a team? And the answer to that is really interesting. And often it's, well, we should be, but we're probably not. And I've also learnt the flip side of that. And I'm interested as well, Laura, you're talking about the ops level team. I mean, sometimes we're working with groups, they're not that teamly, and they don't necessarily need to be either. They don't have that shared purpose. Sometimes it is quite a mix of functions or regions. And what is it that you really want from them? Is the focus more about how they're going to go away and lead, or is it about how they are working together? And probably, I have worked with some teams where I so wanted to force a fit. And I don't quite want them to like hug each other and go down the pub at the, well, I kind of do, but I know that they don't need to do any of that. But actually, surely most of our leadership cohorts, there should be a sense of mutual support, because it's quite lonely sometimes being a leader. And I need to be using this community, this network around me, in order to do what I do and get different opinions and sanity checks and build my network. And so I think I'm back to what you were saying, Sarah, is what are you looking to achieve with that group? Give us a sense, Laura, with those ops level.
I think it's exactly what you just said, is that they've all got their own patches that they lead, but it is that sense of, I don't know, they are a team, but they're not a team, and they need to I think it's actually very split north and well, it is split north and south. We have a northern region, we've got a southern region. The southern guys, I know that they call each other when there's an issue or just to have a vent or whatever it is, and they're a very experienced team and they've all worked together for a minimum of 9 years. Whereas in the north, it's a bit different. We've got a very experienced one and then 3 fairly new people. One of them has come out of pub, or 2 of them, sorry, out of pubs and into ops roles, and I think it's that one of them wants to not officially be a mentor, but to help and support and add a bit of value that way.
Karen, I don't know if you see this in Gym Group and whether or not you have got certain regions where they're doing this and there is the conversations across that leadership level, and some perhaps where it's, I don't know, mate, is that just who's there and length of service, and sometimes it just doesn't happen.
I mean, in my experience, we've been quite fortunate because it is driven top down insights in the organization. So everybody, whether you're in operations or head office, everybody has the introduction to insights and the report, and has the workshop. So that's the beauty of it. It's, this is the language and the culture we use at the Gym Group. But where it differs, I think it's where you've got certain clusters of regions where if their regional manager doesn't use the language, doesn't embrace it, then I'm not saying they pay lip service, not at all, because everyone attends it, but you can start to see some differences in how they collaborate, and or not, as the case may be. So when things are coming up, because the danger of central are giving us stuff to do, and where it's been embraced, where they willingly want to get involved versus I'm here because Central has requested us to be here. And we, myself and Emma and Ross, we managed to get that balance quite right because they know we speak the language and everything, but it's that initial hesitation. And I think that's where we start to see regional differences. So we've got an issue at the moment with some of the London regions where they're quite a disparate group because they span a number of regions. So the language is very different versus our Northern, Manchester, Scotland, very united, very cohesive, really, really work well together. So we know we've got to do a bit of work. I'm actually doing some conversation at the moment about how our London groups can collaborate much better, because they are 5 regions in one London area versus above Watford, everyone's a bit more cohesive. So that's the sort of,
isn't it? Yeah. When above Watford, you've got this wild geographical spread.
And it works really well. And it's so London, for the smallest area, seems to be quite a challenge. So the leader or the senior leader plays a big role in that, in the influence and ensuring that newer team members. So the proactive leaders are saying, Karen, I've got a new team member, new fitness manager, new gym manager. They haven't gone through the introduction to insights. Do we have any open courses and get them on? Because I really want to understand what their profile is. I want to be able to share as part of the team well. That's a proactive manager who's constantly looking to ensure that everyone in their region is talking the same language and experiences it in the same way. That's when it's at its best.
Yeah, I love how you do that at the Gym Group. And it's not the same elsewhere. And Sarah, I don't know your perspective on this, but sometimes we're like lighting fires in different places and hope it, and gradually, and suddenly the senior level go, what's this about? We're not
very much
into it, but everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, very much so. Sorry, beg your pardon. Go on, Karen. Oh, okay. I was just thinking about Laura's point around, these groups where there's somebody who really wants to mentor, and then there are others that are newer in post. And I guess the question there, Laura, is around, how might they support each other? Has there been a conversation around what do they need from each other? How might they work together based on the fact that they are a cadre of managers, whether or not they actually work together or not? Is there a way they can lean on each other, support each other, help each other? Is there something there about understanding what itch they might scratch for each other, if that makes sense?
There definitely is, because there is that in the south. So I look after the south, not the north, and I know that this is happening in the north, but there definitely is that, because I know that the guys in the south do that a lot. They have days out, not really regularly, they've got jobs to do, but they have the odd day out together, just going around the patch and the pub and bouncing ideas off of each other and that sort of thing. And I think it would be good if there was that in the north as well. How this gets into it, I still don't know. But
And part of this can be, as Julie says, it's that lighting small fires, and then that, there starts to become a bit of a culture around, what is it that's going on? What is it that you're talking about? What is this that you're referring to? There becomes a bit of a sense of, oh, what are you doing? That sounds really interesting. I find that if you're able to start with your top teams, it does help. You can have those tricky conversations in the first instance, and they do all of that kind of cynicism and that, oh, what's all this and how is this going to support us? And with that kind of advocacy, you're then able to cascade out. But conversely, when Julie and I've worked together, there's been the piece around lighting small fires, very much in that much more frontline leadership role, management role. And then that in itself starts to create a bit of a movement, because when you've got people naturally who are advocating for insights, then it starts to create a bit of a movement in its own right, and then people want to know more about it. So, it can work both ways. I think if you've got that buy-in at the very top, it does help with the cascade and rollout. But all it needs is a bit of advocacy, somewhere where you're able to influence. And if you're linking it then into how it supports us to deliver, to to meet our objectives, whatever it happens to be, to absolutely support our culture and where we need to be, then, again, how much are you communicating out how it has made a difference in your organizations? Where has it had a positive impact, so that others can say, oh, I could do with a bit of that. I think that really does help, really talking about where you've achieved and where it's hit the spot.
And before we close, so I just want to come back to the idea of scaling it when you've got like different levels of experience in the room. But what you've just said has really sparked something in me. Before I was ever a insights facilitator, I used to deliver, we called it the IMP, the Initial Management Program, and it was for frontline managers. And oh my God, it was phenomenal. And I cannot tell you the change that we saw it was a large organization, 15 to 20,000. And it took about 4 to 5 years for these people to start working their way up the organization. And they had this robust, strong grounding that just made them amazing middle managers and leaders. So there's something about that focus there, that group, that first line management that is sometimes overlooked. But if you want cultural change really embedded, oh my God, they're key. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say that, from my experience, I know that Helen has done exactly that where she works. We've done that, in the past with leaders, working them through the ranks. And again, anywhere in an organization, if you have somebody who's experienced it and they're then able to bring that in, you quite often find, and certainly with the organizations I work with, I've got people who are saying 20 years ago, I had a ColourWorks thing, and it's just that it sticks with them. They've used that, they take it through with them wherever they go. And it does have quite an impact, doesn't it, on how they show up, how they see self, and then how they communicate with others. And so, remembering where have we done a good job? Where have we really landed an outcome that was really, really added value? And how can we use that as part of influencing others could be really key.
Different levels of experience in the room, Sarah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I want to ensure that it's a safe environment, greener than a green thing, and everyone is able to speak up regardless of experience, and we're valuing the fresh perspectives.
Nice. Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
But there is something about there are elements where I might need to take a step back and be repetitive or get people on board, because you do need everyone at that similar level. Do you experience it much yourself, Sarah?
With regards to trying to get everybody through at the same level, is that what you mean?
When you've just got very different levels of experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's it's an interesting one. Again, levels of experience. I think one of the things we talked about when we were pulling together this session around top tips, the piece around even just down to our understanding or our assumption around what level of experience, leadership experience our leaders have can be really interesting. I catch myself, at times thinking this person's terribly senior, and so therefore they've got heaps of leadership experience. They know what I'm talking about. And that respect piece means that I stand in that space and have a huge expectation on what they're going to know and how they lead. And that's not always the case. We are the leadership experts. We are the insights practitioner experts. And I think it's okay for us to, again, inquire with regards to, you know, what does that, where are they with their leadership journey, and what might they value a hand with, and where might we help them again with that safety piece, that vulnerability piece? You know, what are the things that are challenging them? So yeah, I'm conscious of time, Julie.
And these were some of our top tips, wasn't it, when we were having this conversation? And you're making me think, for me, as an experienced L&D professional, there are still things that I read and think, I've known this for 20 years. Am I doing it? No. So, you know, I get caught out all of the time.
Me too.
So I love that. That's our, where did that come in? The number 2, wasn't it? Just don't assume that leaders know everything. I love the way you work, Sarah, with the context is king, take a brief. There is a really nice briefing sheet from Insights that just asks a series of coaching questions. I'll send it around for any team that you're working with, but it might add a few extra questions to your list. Just get curious beforehand, rather than going straight in. We've talked about that safe space, absolutely fundamental. I think even more so at this level, so that hierarchy, people can be honest. Some of those strong fundamental principles of leadership that are absolutely core. And I think sensing intuition is a bit of a golden nugget. I think you can have some great conversations about that. I'm so high sensing. I always get a leadership team to talk about their meetings. Can you imagine the bill and the cost alone of those people sitting in that room for 2-3 hours is phenomenal. And it's so indicative of the culture of the team. But it's a real tangible for me of, I want the next leadership team meeting to be different, to be more effective, to be better. Let's get rid of some of the frustrations. So I tend to focus on that as well and use sensing intuition in those conversations. Final one, Sarah, commit to next steps.
Yeah, definitely. Without doubt, you know, what is going to happen as a result of this? How do we know when we've got there? What are we going to do as a result of this conversation? What are we taking away? And not just, oh, I'll have a think and a reflect about it where at all possible. How am I going to demonstrate our accountability, and what does it look like when we've got there? So, yeah.
We've mentioned Lencioni, which also mentions accountability. If you're not familiar with it and you want some info and to have a chat about it, please let us know, because I think it's a really good tool for this level. Otherwise, oh my word, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us, for your contributions. I hope it was helpful. We are here to help. So if you are facing some of these teams or these challenges and you want a conversation with your account manager, this is what we're here to do. Please let us know. Sarah and I are going to stay online in case anyone's got any additional questions. But otherwise, final bits of feedback for us into chat would be awesome. And have a good rest of the week, rest of the day. Let us know if there's anything that we can do at all. Next webinar, 15th of September, we'll send you out information. And if you can join us in London on the 7th for our conference, that would be even better. We're looking at working with uncertainty, which is just normal, isn't it, Sarah? Same old, same old.
I think so.
I used to all the time talk about when are we going to have clarity? When I'd even use the phrase absolute clarity, left, right, and centre. Yeah, stop doing that quite a while ago. So please come join us, and anything we can do, please let us know.
Thank you.
I will send around slides.
Thank you very much.
Oh, cheers, Karen. Good to see you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Oh, David, good to have you back.